Is it even worth watching Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad's rematch? I mean, the first fight was so one-sided, right? Today, we're going to be talking about UFC 304, including Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad, Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones and Curtis Blaydes, Paddy Pimblett, and all that. But we have a special guest today. Our special guest is James Lynch from Lynch on Sports. He comes in with 55,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. And I was just ecstatic to have him on the show. We talk about all of that. We go into the UFC 304 card in depth. So guys, let's go ahead and tune in and see what James has to say. This weekend, UFC 304, Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad are rematching after obviously the controversial rematch. James, Lynch on Sports, the man himself. Give me your first thoughts on this. Will this fight be any different than the first fight? Because obviously, aside from the eye poke, it felt like Leon Edwards was kind of running away with that fight.
I do. I think they're both different fighters at this point. I think Leon's a little bit older. Obviously, Belal's a lot over too, and a big layoff coming into this fight. But I'm expecting a close fight. If you look at Belal Muhammad, typically really tough guy to finish. I think you have to go all the way back to that first Vicente Luque fight, the last time Belal got finished in a fight, and that was a quick one. I think it was a first-round finish. I actually think that was on the, if I'm not mistaken, that was the Conor McGregor Eddie Alvarez card. I have to go back and look that up. But it's been a long time, and so my thing is, if Leon can't finish him, like you would think it would be a knockout or maybe a submission. This fight could be close, and Leon's been in a few close fights. You look at some of the Usman fights, even the second Usman fight that they have. Yes, Leon got the finish at the end, but that was a fight that I think you could argue that Usman was winning. The second fight was close. So I'm kind of expecting the same thing, because here's the thing. I'm a believer in, Belal's wanted this for so long. I mean, this was one of the weirdest title shots that never came to fruition. We see him working with Khabib and his team. We see him working at every area of this fight. Like, I think this does mean a lot to Belal, and I know that's kind of just throwing out nothing technical there, but just, sort of that covering every base thing here. But I just think Belal has really leveled up from fight to fight. I remember when he lost to Jeff Neal, I thought this guy's probably not going to end up being a contender, but he's gone out there and gone on quite the run. He's beat guys that he wasn't supposed to beat. He took out Wonder Boy. He's taken out, took out Sean Brady. That was a really good performance from him. He actually finished Sean in that fight. So you've got Belal, who's, basically carving out all areas quite well. His striking's improved. His wrestling is obviously a big asset for him. You got to remember too, when Usman fought Leon Edwards, I think there's a case to be made that Usman is maybe not the same Usman we've seen from years past. He's older. Maybe those knees are worn out a little bit. So I think Edwards, if he keeps it on the feet, will be good. I don't think we can take anything away from that Colby fight. I just think that was just a weird fight, so our reference point would be the Kamaru Usman fights. And I think both those were close. I think Belal is going to provide a similar challenge. I think this fight goes the distance, and I do think Belal can edge this one out. I'm in the minority here. I know a lot of people are high on Leon Edwards. I know a lot of people refer to the first fight, but I think that was so long ago that we're seeing a different Belal in there. And I think we're also seeing a different Leon. I think Leon's leveled up. I mean, that head kick on Kamaru Usman, that was something that we hadn't seen in a lot of previous Leon fights. A lot of his fights were going the distance. So I think Belal slightly edges one out. The only thing I'm kind of worried about too is the judging, because it's in the UK. You never know. They might go to Leon's side, but I do think no matter what, I don't think we're going to see a finish here. I think this fight is going the full 5 rounds.
I don't think it's too bold to say that a fight between Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad would go the distance for sure. The thing I point to with Leon Edwards a lot of times, if you look back to that very first fight with Kamaru Usman, right? The one where he just kind of got manhandled on the fence. Since that fight, he's really worked well and become this anti-wrestler. Like he works really well off the fence. He circles out well, circles off the fence. He makes sure to win these clinch exchanges. He breaks off with the elbow and stuff. And I believe like in a division like welterweight, where it's Usman, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington, Belal Muhammad, he's like the exception, because it's a lot of wrestlers and stuff.
Yeah.
The problem I see with Belal Muhammad here is the fact that he does rely on the cage wrestling so much. I could see him having a lot of success if he found a way to find the takedowns in the middle of the cage and deny Leon Edwards that chance to stall on the clinch against the cage. And I think that's kind of the X factor here. I don't hate Belal Muhammad. I don't find him the most exciting fighter, but I mean, I'm a Neanderthal that likes violence. So, like what do you get? But like, if Belal Muhammad can find those takedowns in the middle of the cage, I think he can ride out Leon Edwards. I don't think he finishes him, but I think he can ride out Leon Edwards. And he could take a decision. So I don't think you're far off possibly there. But if he's going to rely on cage wrestling like he has been doing, and like he trains with Khabib, that's their thing. I don't know if he has such an easy path to victory.
Yeah, no, it's going to be close. Like I definitely see, and I could also see Leon, take a couple rounds. Like I do think it's going to be like one of those fights where at the end of it, we're going to be like, who won that? Like it's
Yeah.
going to be very close. Another thing I'll point to as well is that, and this is kind of working against my argument, but like I thought Belal should have finished Gilbert Burns. He was clearly injured in that fight. The fact that he didn't go for the kill and try and get it done is a bit concerning because like that was a fight that I think he could have finished. And again, like you said, he relied too much on the wrestling. He just kept taking him down and sort of trying to win the fight that way. You can't do that against Leon Edwards. I think with the opportunity. And I mean, let's face it, this is it for Belal. It took him so long to get this title shot to begin with. He's 36. Like he's a lot older than Leon. I think people forget that Belal, is one of the older fighters on that roster. We talk about Colby, but Bilal's not that far behind age-wise. And he's got a long layoff coming into this fight. So there's a lot of things that work against him, but I just see it being like razor close. Like I think if you're betting this, you bet the over, you bet the fight goes the distance, save yourself the headache of picking on either side because like I said, with the judging, you don't really know, but I think Belal just slightly edges this one out.
Yeah, I do think you do have a really good point about the home advantage for Leon Edwards too. The UK judges are quite biased, and this is being billed as a UK card. Now, if Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad ends up like the first fight, where Leon Edwards is kind of running away with this and kind of piecing him up on the feet. Would you be surprised or like impressed with Leon Edwards? You mentioned like he's not the same fighter as he was with that fight. Obviously I think he kind of turned his striking style after he got caught by Nate Diaz of all people.
Yeah,
I think that's really a big turning point in his
it's a
style.
great point. Yeah.
So would you be shocked like or surprised even that Leon Edwards would come out and revert to how he used to fight, a little bit more, not action, but a little bit more output?
I would not be surprised if he went back to the way he fights. I would be surprised if it looked like the first fight where he was like clearly ahead and in control, just because I think Belal has really leveled up since then. I think the Belal since that fight has become much better. Like I said, the striking's improved. We saw him and Brady. I know Brady's more of a wrestler, but still, like the fact that like he was able to finish him, I thought was impressive. A lot of people don't give Belal much credit for that win, and vice versa. People crap on Sean Brady for that performance. Like no one can have a bad night in the office, apparently, according to a lot of MMA fans. So, yeah, I think like I would be surprised if it went like the first fight, just because I think Belal has improved so much. But would it totally shock me? Is it something that I don't think could happen? Of course not. Like I think Leon could do that and could take over. And maybe this is me looking too much in the last fight with Colby, because Colby, again, I don't fault Leon for that fight because it was more Colby not doing much in that fight, and it was just not like a good performance on either end. Like, do I think Leon could have taken more risks in that fight with Colby? Yes, but I mean, look, like Colby wasn't doing anything. It was such a bizarre performance that we hadn't seen from him before.
All right, so final thoughts and picks. I'm assuming you're going with Belal. You're talking a big game about Belal, and I
Well,
don't think you're
decision.
far
Yeah,
off.
we're gonna go with that. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so co-main event is an interim title between Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blaydes. There's so much controversy and so many permutations of stuff we can talk about here because Jon Jones just got charged with those misdemeanors for the incident with the drug-free. I gotta remember,
yeah.
drug-free sport guys.
Yeah.
I don't see him stripping Jon Jones here, but this does strengthen the case for a Tom Aspinall is the legitimate heavyweight champion. Would you agree?
I would agree with that without the misdemeanor charge. Listen, if you're going to call yourself the best in the world, you have to fight the best. And I'm sorry, at 42 years of age, Stipe Miocic is not the best heavyweight in the world. Jon should be fighting Tom. Now, look, I've been a defender of Jon Jones for a while because I think a lot of the people criticizing this, and I think it's fair, by the way, too, because like I also want to see the best fight the best. Jon gains absolutely nothing fighting Tom Aspinall. Like he could fight Stipe, and to the casual fan, Dana White and everyone else could convince people that Jon really did fight the best. But and really, Tom doesn't have a big enough name yet that I think would add to Jon's legacy as being this great fighter. Like I look at it, I kept using this analogy and I'll use it again here. If your boss came to you right now and said, hey, listen, we're going to give you 2 extra days off a week. We're going to pay you a little bit more, or we're going to make you work more and we're going to cut your pay just a little bit. That's the equivalent of him fighting Tom Aspinall. Like Stipe's got the prestige of being, this great heavyweight champion. And, this is a fight they've wanted to put together for years, but I think it's a much easier fight for Jon with Stipe having such a long layoff and being older than it would be if he fought Aspinall. I'm very high on Tom Aspinall. And I think if Aspinall fought Jones, I think there's a possibility Aspinall could win that. And I think that's too much of a risk for Jon. I think he's been too much of a service to the UFC. If you think of who he fought, like I think a lot of newer fans don't get Jon Jones, and they didn't get to see him when we saw him when he was destroying guys in the light heavyweight division and like just looking like, man, no one's going to beat this guy. Like that's still like that should count for something, right? So I don't mind that he's not fighting Aspinall. Like I get it. And like I said, it's more about him getting the easier opportunity than it is fighting Aspinall. So yes, I think Aspinall's the real champ because like All they had to do, and no one would be upset with about it, is if they just stripped Jon of the title back when he wasn't going to fight Aspinall and give it to Tom and make it the real title. No one can play. But I look at this fight at 304 as the real heavyweight title for me personally.
Yeah, and all credit to Jon Jones. What he's accomplished in the sport has been
Oh
great.
yeah.
There's always the asterisk of steroid abuse. I honestly, I don't care about that. That doesn't pertain to me. I'm a technical type guy, so I like watching the techniques that Jon Jones uses, and he's incredible. But I think you're spot on when you say like he's not fighting the best. And in the UFC's whole thing from boxing is like the best is fighting the best. So like we just had Jaron Ennis fighting boxing last week. He's not fighting Terrence Crawford right now. And that's the two best fighters in that division. And this is kind of a shade of that.
Yeah.
I feel like the UFC's wanting to make the money fights. They hear, Steven Espinoza bragging about $20 million gates when they're going out of business. And it's like, wow, okay, let's see what we can do. And they're kind of bringing that. And I think that's part of it with like the BMF belts and stuff. Like they're just trying to find ways to market their product. And I get it. It's a business. But at the same time, like as somebody who's been watching the sport for a long time, like, man, this is a departure of what I grew up liking, what I loved about it.
Yeah, I just like I think like again, and you know what, it might not be up to the UFC. Like I think John's one of those guys that he's so big, he can probably call the shots and be like, look, like I'm not fighting Tom Aspinall. Like you better spin it. And this is another reason, like I noticed people always bring up how Dana always references Jon as being the pound for pound number one. That's a marketing tactic. I don't know if people realize that, but that's his way of saying, look, to the average fan, this fight is still very legit. That's us hardcore fans know that John's not fighting the best heavyweight, but to the casual fan, if you're buying the pay-per-view in November for New York, let's assume it still happens, that's going to be how you sell this thing. Jon Jones is the pound for pound best. He's fighting arguably the best heavyweight champion in UFC history. That's how they're going to sell it. The rest of us know Tom Aspinall might beat both of those guys, right? Like especially Stipe. He would definitely beat him, I think, at this point.
Dude, I think Curtis Blaydes can beat both of those guys. As crazy as that sounds, Curtis Blaydes, right. And he's being overlooked in this Tom Aspinall fight. Don't let you like. Oh yeah, Curtis Blaydes has this thing to where he does kind of get like scared. I don't want to say scared, but like he does kind of drop the ball when he's having big fights. But he possesses the skills. His striking's improved, leaps and bounds. His wrestling is second to none in the division, maybe except you could say Jon Jones. But like even Curtis Blaydes, like the heavyweight division might not be the best, but the top 3 or 4 guys, they're really good and exciting. And this matchup, I do think also like Curtis Blaydes is kind of getting overlooked here because it's all Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall. I mean, what if Curtis goes and lays on him all fight and he takes home the belt to the United States? Like, go America, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's close, and I'm there's no bigger Curtis Blaydes fan than me. Like I've known Curtis since he fought in RFA. Like this is a guy who's one of the nicest guys ever. Has worked his ass off. He's had a lot of unfortunate setbacks, like fights that he should have won that ended in knockout. Like Pavlovich, I think he could beat. I think he could beat. I could definitely beat Derek Lewis. It's just like he, for whatever reason, like he has these fights against power punchers and he gets caught. And I want to clear up something too because this is I think important when you're looking at this matchup. The fights that I think Lewis was the only knockout where he was out cold. Every other knockout he's had, he got knocked out, but it wasn't like a knockout where like, oh my God, like he had to be pulled out on a stretcher. Like Lewis was really the bad one. So that's another thing that I kind of keep in mind here. Like, yes, he's like for the first Ngannou fight, if you remember, it was like a TKO standing, like, yeah, it was, yeah. And it wasn't like he was knocked out cold. So that does add a bit of context to this in this fight with Aspinall as well. And I think Curtis is the best wrestler in the division. I think the Jones thing is kind of weird because like, it was just so quick. Like we didn't even really I still don't know if Jon can take a punch at heavyweight. I really don't. Like that's a big factor to me because even if you look at like heavyweight, who are like the power guys that he fought? Glover, he never fought Rumble Johnson. Like I always wonder like if Jon's chin was tested against a guy that's got some serious power, how would that look? Like that's why I think like if you ever fought Francis or he fought, like even like an Aspinall, like I think there's a case to be made that Jon could get finished, maybe because we haven't really seen that chin tested. Like if you look at the guys that look at Gustafsson, he's not really a knockout artist, right? Like to me, it's that's the thing I want to see at some point with Jon. And I don't even think we'll see it against Stipe because I would imagine Stipe is not going to have the same powerful punch that he had a couple of years ago. We'll see, but.
And even Stipe is not the heaviest hitter. He's a tactically sound fighter. And he's not like even prime Stipe probably wouldn't have tested Jon Jones's chin. So so as far as the matchup, we spent a lot of time talking Jon Jones and stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think we got to move on here. Make your pick: Aspinall or Blaydes.
It's Aspinall. And the reason I have to go with Aspinall, so there's a couple fighters, I'm sure you feel the same way when you watch them, you're like, there's something special here. And to me with Aspinall, it's just he's so well-rounded. And the dude moves like a middleweight. Like he's so fast. I just think that with a 5-round fight and Blaydes could take him down, Blaydes could win a bunch of rounds. There's just all Aspinall has to do is knock him out once, and I think he can do it. This is a guy that has the power. He's got the ground game. He's just so good everywhere. Curtis Blaydes is a great wrestler, and you're absolutely right. His striking has improved tremendously. I used to get annoyed when people used to call him boring because it's like, look how many guys he's knocked out, like TKO finishes. Like, look at Almeida the last fight. That was impressive. But I just think that Tom, like, all he has to do is catch Blaydes. And that's, just seeing Blaydes knocked out over and over again, the 2 times against Ngannou, Pavlovich, and Lewis. I just can't in my right mind pick Curtis here because I think Tom can just knock him out at any point. So I'm going to go Aspinall 2nd round knockout over Curtis Blaydes.
All right, let's go through these next 2 real quick. Arnold Allen's on a 2-fight losing streak. Once the brightest, the shining diamond of the featherweight division. He's lost 2 straight, and he's taking on a very dangerous Giga Chikadze. Now, I used to think Giga Chikadze was the striker not antithesis, but like there was not a better striker in the UFC featherweight division aside from probably Max Holloway. And then he got battered by Calvin Kattar. Now with Arnold Allen being a southpaw fighter, Giga Chikadze has some advantages in fighting that. So, do you think Arnold Allen is in danger of losing his 3rd straight fight?
I don't. I think Arnold Allen's a lot better than Chikadze. I know Chikadze's got the striking. I think what people forget with Chikadze, he's 35. He's going to be 36 this year. He's a bit older. And, because he was on Contender Series, right? So everyone just assumes he's a younger guy. He's not. And he's been out for a while. He's had injuries. And you're look at Kattar, what it didn't, if I'm not mistaken, Kattar basically wrestled him that fight, right? Like it was like, he basically just like, he controlled Chikadze the whole fight, and then he beat him up as well. Because remember, there's that famous thing in the hospital after he's like, I beat him 9 out of 10 times. It's like, I don't think so, dude. Like you got completely battered in that fight. So I like Allen a lot. I think there's a case to be made that Allen did enough to maybe win his last fight against Ivoyev. It was close. He's right there. And again, the loss before that was Max freaking Holloway. Like a lot of guys aren't going to beat Max Holloway. So listen, I think as soon as I saw this matchup made, I'm thinking Allen decision. I think that's, we've seen him knock out guys. Like he knocked out Dan Hooker. He's got power. Like if he wants to strike, he can. I think, obviously on paper, Chikadze's the better striker, but I think that wrestling and grappling that Allen has and his speed, the fact that he's younger, just leads me to believe he's going to decision here. So, no, I think Allen's going to get back in the win column against Chikadze, and I think he's going to do it fairly, not easy, but I think it'll be like a clear win for him. I don't think it'll be any controversy.
It'd be a good win for him here. So last section, let's go ahead and get rapid fire here. Paddy Pimblett and now officially King Green, Bobby Green. His name's officially changed legally. Do you think this is a big step? This is a big step up for Paddy Pimblett as opposed to his last few fights. Bobby Green is I don't rate him as one of the best in the division, but he's a dangerous fighter to these up and comers who doesn't have quite the high level experience. Do you think this is a too big of a step up for Paddy Pimblett?
I do. I think King Green is going to knock him out. This was one thing I was waiting for, was Paddy fighting a guy that has knockout power. And I know Bobby Green, I think the last knockout was Grant Dawson. That was the jab or whatever it was that knocked him down, which probably won't knock out Paddy here. But Paddy gets hit a lot. Like you look at his debut, Vendramini hit him. He's had fights where he gets clipped a little bit, and he just hasn't fought the right guy that has that power. I think Green does. My only concern here in this fight, and I could absolutely see this happening, is Green can't knock him out. It goes the distance. Green's obviously winning, but the crowd's on the side of Paddy, and Paddy gets the decision like Jared Gordon. I'm worried about that. So I'm still going to go Bobby by knockout. The other thing we got to remember, this is the last fight on Paddy's deal. I mean, this is big for him, because if he loses this and gets knocked out like I think he does, what type of value is he going to have? I know someone will sign him because he's a good personality, but you got to wonder like where he goes. Like I think Paddy's better served fighting elsewhere, because until he shows me something different, I don't see him as this future contender like some people do. I think it's been pretty mediocre for him so far.
Yeah, I do very well see a future where Paddy Pimblett decides to say, hey, I'm good in the UFC. I had my run. I'm going back to Cage Warriors because like he's a massive star. You don't have to travel near
PFL
as
does
much.
a lot of European shows, or Bellator. Like he could go over there and like even try his hand. They do so many international shows, PFL and Bellator. I could see him being a perfect fit there. Just sorry to interrupt you, by the way.
No. You got a very good point there. Bellator, there's Octagon. You can let him do all the steroids he wants and go to KSW. I mean, there's so many options, and he can get paid. He just brings the eyeballs. So you're picking Paddy Pimblett to lose via KO against King Green here, correct?
Yeah, I am correct. Yeah, on the record, Paddy Pimblett's going to get knocked out.
So my concern with this is, Bobby Green he does like to show off and stuff, and he leans back all the time trying to do his shoulder roll, which is effective, very effective. But if Paddy Pimblett can decide, hey, you're leaning back, I'm shooting, I think he can have a really good night and have a good showing against Bobby Green. Now, push come to shove, I'm going Bobby Green because Paddy Pimblett hasn't shown me anything on the feet, and he's also struggled at times to get people to the ground. So, I got to go Bobby Green, but I don't think it's clear. I think Paddy can have a huge day, and really show out and show up to this event.
Yeah, it's going to be one to watch. I'm actually really excited for that fight on that card. That's a good pay-per-view, by the way. Good.
Very good.
I've been critical of the UFC the last couple of events. This is a good card. They did a good job on this one.
Yeah. I'm very excited. James, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it, and we will definitely have to link up again soon, man.
Absolutely. I owe you. I mean, we've been trying to do this for a while. I know I've been busy, but anytime you want me on, you just slide right into my DMs, and we'll make it happen, man. Always good talking to you.
All right, my man.